Start with the prayer. Dear God, today as this session opens, we pray that your presence will be before us and everyone who serves in the decision-making process in our city. We pray for direction which will lead our city to be strong and unified. May we continue the legacy of our founders. May we be granted this day the wisdom to make decisions which will be for the good of our city. We also pray for your special blessing on all those who are working to transform our city and make it a better place to live and work. Amen. Please stand for salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, please call the roll.
Counsel Milanazzo.
Here.
Counsel Rourke. Here. Counsel Samaras.
Here.
Counsel Belanger.
Here.
Mayor Elliott.
Here.
Counsel Elliott. Mayor Kennedy.
Here.
Counsel Leahy.
Here.
Counsel Leary.
Here.
Counsel Mercia.
Here.
9 present.
The first order of business will be the approval of the minutes of the city council meeting for, first of all, we have a moment of silence. Council Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to offer a moment of silence in Docking Chamber for Janice Mahoney. She was the beloved wife of Richard Ratch Mahoney, who died in 1981. Before retiring in 2002, Jan Mahoney was employed as a housing specialist with Community Teamwork in Lowell. Jan was active in the Democratic Party for over 28 years and was chairman for Ward 6 for many of those years. She was selected as secretary of the Democratic City Committee. She was also a former commissioner of the Board of Parks for the city of Lowell. Jan was also appointed to the Election Commission, where she served from 1997 to 2002. She was also a board member of the Council on Aging. Jan was the founder of the Pawtucketville Girls Softball League, and on April 24th, 2005, the city honored her by naming a field in Pawtucketville the Jan Mahoney Girls Softball Field, and it was well-deserved. Jan is survived by her 2 daughters, Laura Ann Cochran and Jennifer Mahoney Brum, and her 3 sons, Patrick, Paul, and Timothy Mahoney, 6 grandchildren, and a great-grandson. She was a wonderful woman. We offer our sympathy to her family, relatives, and her many friends. She will be truly missed. And I'd also like to offer a moment of silence in Docking Chamber for William F. Thompson III. He was proud to be a lifelong resident of the Highland section in his younger years and Centerville section in his later years. William is survived by his spouse, Rosemary Thompson. William attended Lowell schools and was a graduate of St. Francis Seminary High School in Andover, Mass., class of '73. He also attended Northern Essex Community College. After college, he began his lifelong professional career in real estate. He became a well-known and respected realtor and associate broker for Dick Lapine Real Estate in Lowell, and was a member of the Northeast Board of Realtors. Bill was very proud of his Irish heritage and was very active in the community. He was a member of the Coalition for a Better Acre, the Centerville Neighborhood Action Group, the Portuguese American Civic League, Yang's Marital Arts Tai Chi of Andover. In addition, he was amongst the very passionate group who ensured the ties between Lowell and its sister city, Nairobi, that they remain strong. He had a genuine love of people. He was fluent in many languages. He would often spend his time learning about other cultures and reading. In addition to his spouse, Rosemary, and his mother, Virginia, he is survived by his 5 children, William IV, Ryan, Sean, Caitlin, and Devin, as well as his siblings, Neil, Maria, and Daniel. We offer our sympathy to his family, relatives, and many friends. He will be truly missed. And I'd also like to offer a moment of silence in Docking Chamber to all the people who have passed away since our last city council meeting. May they all rest in peace. Thank you.
Please stand. First order before us is is approval of the minutes of the city council meeting on February 2nd and the auditor and clerk oversight subcommittee of February 2nd for acceptance. We have a motion to accept by Council Rourke, seconded by Council Mercia. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next order of business is a discussion on the city auditor's position. Council Belanger.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I think as of Friday afternoon, we all received all the candidates' applications and resumes, and the council then reviewed them and submitted the top three choices for selection. I don't believe we know who those are yet, unless I haven't got any correspondence. I don't know about my colleagues, so I guess the discussion should be when should we hold, although we don't know candidates' availability at this point, when we're going to hold interviews, and as we all know, this needs to be done sooner rather than later. So I'd like to open that discussion, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to request that the city clerk provide us a report of the information that I received and the tallies and those three top candidates that were selected by virtue of the ballot process, and then we'd have a discussion on interview or next steps.
I can give you the information now in terms of who the top three were. If that's what you like, Counselor.
If that's okay with my colleagues, I just think we need to move forward in whether we want to interview them or if they're new candidates that we haven't interviewed, or if they are candidates we've already interviewed.
The three top candidates submitted on behalf of on the council were Brian Perry, John Linehan, and Sheila Ruth. Council, I had an email late in the afternoon that Mary Callery from the Human Resource Department reached out and contacted these three people. She has not heard back from them yet, as of now.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Three, Mr. Mayor, I wonder if, with the indulgence of the council, whether we would like to proceed with setting up interviews for these three candidates, as they're three new individuals that we have not interviewed in the past.
Do you want to suggest a time, Councilor?
Yeah.
Either before the next city council meeting or hold a special hearing, hold a special meeting, Mr. Mayor. Either way, it doesn't much matter to me.
Okay. Council Mercy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last time that we interviewed candidates was on a Tuesday. We started at 4 o'clock. We did all three. We did from 4 to 4:45 for Linda Wright. We did 4:45 to 5:30. Within that time frame, from 4, then 4:45, then 5:30. So
Okay.
it was, and we did it on a Tuesday, and we made it happen before a city council meeting. So
Do we have any subcommittee meetings scheduled for that day?
We do.
So
we got to hear back from these candidates first. So I don't know when that is going to be, but as soon as we do, we could set it up on a particular Tuesday and try to leave that open from subcommittee meetings.
Do we have meetings the next two?
Yeah, we do have meetings.
Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Unfortunately, with my new position in Revere, I would not be able to be back here for 4 o'clock on any day except Friday. So again, I would respectfully request that they be from 5 o'clock on, if that would be possible.
It seems, according to the clerk, that for the next couple of Tuesdays, there's subcommittee meetings that are already scheduled. So maybe Tuesday doesn't end up being the best day, although it would be convenient. So if someone wanted to propose another day of, then Council Samaras.
I will have a problem for next week. I was just hoping that if we could not do it next week and the following week, or towards the end of this week. But I don't think that's possible with identifying the candidates that quickly. But if it could be put off for another week. Otherwise, whatever the will of the council is, support.
Okay, Council Leary.
Just as a recommendation, and I agree with Councilor Samaras, but if the city clerk could just pull, offline the availability of everybody, I think that might be the best and most effective way of doing it. But
Yeah,
I think,
Ms. Callery is in the process of doing
Okay.
that now, yeah.
okay, so once you know what their availability is, then we could back into that date, we could pull and see when our dates as well. Because picking a date, if they're not available or in town or they're on a business trip or whatever, you're just going to wait till that person's ready anyway, so.
Okay, so then, what's the wish of the body? You just want to wait, or,
How about Thursday?
Council Leahy?
Sure, have
Have the clerk.
Ms. Gallery find out when they're available, and then we'll back into that as soon as possible, obviously.
So we would make a decision next Tuesday?
Sure.
Is it Council
Yeah,
Lanza?
yeah, I agree with Council Leahy. Let's see the availability of the candidates and schedule something from there. Because we don't know the availability, and it'll probably be a special meeting other than a Tuesday
Yeah.
as well. And if the city ought to, if the clerk could actually put it on the agenda again, so we can talk about it next Tuesday, not to go by the open meeting law. Thank you.
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, then we'll just put it off until, we'll just postpone action until next Tuesday. Council Mercy?
We could have the clerk, as if he's not busy enough, poll the council as to availability. And then he could report back next Tuesday and let us.
Well, I think next week is out altogether, so Council Samaras won't be able to be here, and it's not going to be on a Tuesday.
When the
it'll
next
be in-
available date is that we can all coincide in, then he could report when that time would be.
Okay. All right, so there's a motion to delay action for 1 week by Council Mercy, seconded by Council Rourke. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted.
Mr. Mayor, could I just ask, Council Milonazo, what would be the best time if you're coming from Revere? No earlier than 6, right?
Yeah, I would say,
Okay.
yeah.
So
And
we
again,
should just do it on another night.
Yeah.
So Tuesday will be out.
Thank you, Council Elliott, thank you.
Okay, next we have a public hearing, but it's not yet 7 o'clock, so we'll skip ahead to item 4, communications from the city manager. Motion responses. We have motion responses A through E. We'll take item A first, which is an update regarding the property at 247 Remington Street. Council Leahy.
Thank you. Through you to the manager. Thank you for the report. The only, I guess, I can see where this is going. It's more of a personal dispute, but with the picture on the back, that homeowner, obviously at 247, is just concerned with snow buildup, and I don't know if you're allowed to build right on the line, but they're obviously concerned with the crowding, but there's nothing we can do. It has to go to land court or...
Mr. Manager.
Yes, through you. Council, what we can do is make sure that we have our DPW pay strict attention to the end of the street in the future. We can't do anything about, because that's the town line.
Right.
So we have no jurisdiction over into the Tewksbury side. But we'll make sure that the DPW is aware that they should pay special attention to the end of Remington Street in the future relative to snow removal.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion on item A? If not, moving on to item B, which is a cleanup of the outbound corridor of the Lowell connector. Any discussion on item B? Hearing none, we'll move on to item C, which is a timeline for the new Hamilton Canal parking garage. Council Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, I'd like to thank Diane Trad, Planning and Development, for this timely and very descriptive response. It's a very aggressive timelines, but nonetheless ones that can be achieved. But just concerning, that's something we're going to have to watch right now on the to-do list right now, is to assure that Genesis and Watermack go through, because the sale of the land, the proceeds there are going to go towards design. So we just want to make sure that's going forward, and I'll obviously keep this response in the records, and we'll look at it about 60 to 90 days from now to see where we're at.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
Council. Mr. Manager?
There's some recent news that makes the construction of this garage even more important is the Lowell delegation announced today that the construction of the Judicial Center will definitely begin in August of this year. So it is they've already picked the contractor, DeMayo Construction, and they're going to proceed with construction, and we estimate the beginning of August. So things look terrific, and that'll make the construction of this garage even more paramount to service the Judicial Center.
Outstanding, Mr. Manager. That is great news. Thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Just while we're in that area, Mr. Manager, I know the city received money for the Lord overpass. Any idea on construction timetable?
Thank you.
The
Through you.
spring?
I know it's still in the design phase. When
Oh, it
would
is?
construction start on the Lowell overpass? Come up to the, people at home can't hear you.
So design is complete or
It's
being
still in
complete?
design.
Okay.
Design through 2017, construction 2018, and we're meeting with them quite frequently now.
Okay. So that 11 million, was that design and construction that was announced about a year ago?
I'm sorry.
Yes, it was.
It was, okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, we'll move on to the next two items are informational from the city manager. The first is the National Grid Community Initiative. Mr. Manager.
Yes, we brought this as an informational so that residents can take advantage of this program to save energy in their home. And on a related matter is that there's legislation pending in the legislature that the city of Lowell can run this program in the future, and we're very committed to trying to take this over ourselves and run this program. But this is a great opportunity for the residents to take advantage of mass save and get energy-efficient operations in their house.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. And the final item on the communication to the manager is net school spending. Mr. Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. And through you to the City Council, this, I think, is a really important and exciting informational item to report to you. Since the enactment of the Education Reform Act in 1993, the City of Lowell has not met net school spending without the aid of federal assistance. In the spring of 2014, the district was faced with a deficit of more than $3.8 million. Today, according to the numbers submitted by the school administration and certified by the state, the Lowell Public School System is projected to be funded in excess of the net school spending level by $5.7 million. That's a $9.5 million turnaround the City Council has achieved in just 2 short years. There are 2 major reasons for this. First of all, increased cash contribution from the city. In fiscal year 14, the amount of local tax support to the Lowell Public Schools was $14.5 million. In fiscal year 16, this fiscal year, the City Council brought the level of direct cash support to the Lowell Public Schools at an all-time high of $18.9 million, a budgeted increase of approximately $4.4 million. The second reason is increased services to the school department from the city. I think it's important to note for the City Council and for those people looking at home is that for the most part, the school department operates in buildings owned by the city. Therefore, we pay for all of their electricity. We pay all of their heat. We pay all of the maintenance and repair on those school buildings. Further, we do all of their payroll services, their network services for computer, and we pay all their bills. We've made a concerted effort to improve the physical surroundings of the students and teachers. We all talk about improving quality education for the students, but we also have to make sure that the physical environment in which they're learning is safe and adequate. And what this City Council has done, especially as a result of Councilor Mercier's motion, is to impress upon this administration of our need to ratchet up the repairs and maintenance of the Lowell school buildings. And so therefore, we've made a concerted effort. Now, the city is allowed to allocate those costs as our contribution to the school department pursuant to an agreement. There's an agreement in effect right now that has been approved by the city, by the school department, and it's reviewed every year by the Department of Education, Elementary and Secondary Education for its fairness. And those net school spending figures that we talk about are submitted by the school department and approved by the state. So although the formula may sound confusing, every year it is approved by the state state as being the fair and reasonable allocation of costs the city gives to the school department under net school spending. This council should be commended for its critical support of education in the city of Lowell, and I'm proud to be part of the effort. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a good report, and I concur with you, Mr. Manager. I think this statement, these numbers, the contribution that the city makes to the Lowell Public Schools, that's a statement. That's a strong statement of our commitment to public education. And not only have we met, but we certainly, we're also achieving results in the school system as a result of that. So we know that these contributions, the city's cash contributions, as well as all the support, we make education a priority, as we should. And I think that's important to note, that we understand and recognize the value of education in the city. We know that is the basis for growth and for jobs, and I think this is a good message. And so I want to commend you and your administration, and of course it's the taxpayers that support this. But it's a requirement from the state, and we're obligated to do it. And I think it's important that we do it and fund it to the fullest extent. So I just think the last 2 years we hadn't done it we haven't met net school spending for 19 years straight. So I appreciate the fact that you and your administration are supporting it, and and we're seeing results in the school. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's outstanding news. Congratulations to my colleagues, Mr. Manager, you and your financial team. I think we all played a role in this. We're a team, and it's great news to hear. But to add to Councilor Elliott's comments is that I was glad to hear your focus on maintenance and improvements, because just take a look at, we all have new schools, but they can deteriorate quickly. Just take a look at the Lowell High Fieldhouse, construction in 1980, and pretty much need of almost full replacement. That's what can happen when you don't have proper maintenance, and that cannot happen with all our new schools, and I'm glad to see your focus is on that aspect. So, again, congratulations to my colleagues and to Mr. Manager, you and your financial team. Great work by all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Samaras.
Thank you. I also want to commend the city manager and his team. Just a short while ago, we had the developer, John Powell from Folly White, talk about his success in this city, in this community, and also James Cook from the Lowell plan. And when they talked about one of the issues, what sells a city like Lowell, and one of the top subjects is education. And this administration is making sure that education is being taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none,
If I could, just first of all, through you to the city manager, thank you very much. I appreciate your commitment to, and your financial team's commitment to the schools, which, we all know that's one of the most important economic drivers of any city. We talk about different things that we're going to be developing, but the biggest thing, if your schools are successful and are funded properly, then that's where people come and stay. That's where the taxpayers, your middle class, actually stays in the community. And as we know, they're the bulk of our tax base. So I think that your commitment to that's important. Just a quick question: is the charter schools formula built into this as well, or is that a separate charge?
Mr. Manager.
Yes, it's built in. I'll have Connor Baldwin explain how it's done.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, so the amount that we're assessed by the state each year for charter school tuition is factored into the net school spending formula, less the amount that we're reimbursed by the state. But as this council is well aware, each year that gap widens between what we're assessed and what we're reimbursed. So as it becomes a bigger challenge for the city financially in our operating budget, some of that credit does go towards our net school spending number, that gap.
Just to follow up, you probably don't know the answer to it, but just something to think about as we get into the budget year. I mean, we're spending almost 19 million around, probably go up because their contribution from the state will go up. So we'll probably have a bigger increase of our own contribution, probably exceeding 20 million next year. which is a good thing, I guess. How much of that is actually, that number's not factored into the greater technical school either. That's a separate contribution that we make for, 85% of the students that go to Greater Lowell Tech. Do you know offhand how much we actually pay to that high school on our contribution? It's an unfair question to hit you with that, but it's an additional, if you're paying $20 million roughly, there's an additional sum of money that's significant that goes to Greater Lowell Tech as well. Again, I apologize, you don't have to answer it, but I think there's an additional contribution that we're actually adding, because we make up the bulk of the greater technical school, significantly. Okay. Thank you, and you don't kind of, it's something they feed into as we go through the budget year, because that's important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Leary. There's no further discussion. The chair would entertain a motion to accept the communications from the manager and place them on file. We have a motion to do so by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Leary. Discussion on the motion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. The next item would be item 5.1, which a vote declaring surplus the property at 25 Olney Street, Lowell, and authorizing the city manager to seek proposals for the disposition of said parcel, namely 25 Olney Street in Lowell, and revoking a prior vote with respect thereof. There's no objection. The chair would just waive the full reading of the first reading, go to the second reading, declaring surplus the property at 25 Olney Street in Lowell and authorizing the city manager to seek proposals for the disposition of said parcel, namely 25 Olney Street in Lowell, and revoking a prior vote with respect thereof. Chair would entertain a motion to approve. We have a motion approved by Councilor Elliott, seconded by Councilor Belanger. Discussion on the motion. Roll call.
Council Milonazo.
Yes.
Council Rourke. Yes. Council Samaras.
Yes.
Council Belanger.
Yes.
Council Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Council Leahy.
Yes.
Council Leary.
Yes.
Council Mercia.
Yes.
It's 9 yeas.
Next order of business is an ordinance to amend Chapter 9, Article 10 for the Lowell Veterans Commission. If there's no objection, we'll just do the first reading by title and go and refer this to a public hearing for February.
23rd.
Okay. Refer this to a public hearing for February 23rd, 2016 at 7 p.m. We have a motion to do that by Councilor Mercia, seconded by Councilor Milonazo. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next, subcommittee reports. It's a little before 7, so we'll go to subcommittee reports. We have is there a subcommittee report from the zoning subcommittee? Councilor Milonazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The zoning subcommittee met late this afternoon at 4:30. In attendance, we had members of the subcommittee, Councilor Rourke and Councilor Belanger, along with Councilor Samaras, Councilor Mercier, and Councilor Leahy were in attendance. We also had representatives from the administration. We had Eric Slagle, Sean Shanahan, our city manager, Kevin Murphy, and Christine O'Connor from the law department. We also had 3 representatives from the Pawtucketville Citizens Council here as well. And if you recall, on January 26th, we had a motion that was referred to the zoning subcommittee to refer housing issues to review possible revisions of dwelling classifications under the code, and that was referred to the zoning subcommittee. It was a result of a discussion and information that the council had received on a property located, I believe, at 902, 914 Varnum Avenue. Again, people in the neighborhood felt that the issue around how that property was approved and was allowed to be built there came up. But again, our task this afternoon or this evening wasn't to talk specifically about that, but it certainly did come up during our discussions, but to talk about how we can, as a subcommittee and a full council, look at the zoning code to make improvements so that, again, it be the feeling of the council that we would not have that situation happen again in the future. I thought the discussion was very forthcoming, good information. Again, we called the meeting quickly because of the Pawtucketville Citizens Council concern about what did happen there and what could possibly happen in other parts of the city. But again, we were assured by Eric Slagle that, and as an example, 2 of those types of modular homes, manufactured homes, cannot be built beyond 2. So again, your point, Mayor Kennedy, when you indicated that if you had 20 of those types of houses, you could constitute possibly a trailer park. So again, we certainly are trying to stay away from that, but we got a lot of good feedback from the residents. They talked about the current interpretation of the zoning code, which again, we're going to get some information back from Eric Slagle relative to differentiating between a mobile home and a manufactured home and even a prefab home. And then we talked about a little bit the existing structure at 902 Varnum Avenue. Again, we tried to shy away from a more in-depth discussion only because it really wasn't specifically on our agenda. And then we talked about the future and what could be happening to the zoning code through recommendation through the subcommittee to the full council. Again, we're going to start by looking at definitions, and then from there, we're going to look at other ways that we could possibly tighten up the issue of mobile home, manufactured home, and prefabricated home. So, again, we get into some FEMA issues as well, not only at that site, but they also brought up another property, I want to say, I think it was on Topman Road, if I recall. But again, by way of information and report of progress, we decided to recess the subcommittee until Eric Slagle and his team put together some information that we can discuss at the subcommittee level, and then bring recommendations back to the full council. So I would offer that. If my colleagues have anything else to add, I'd offer that as a report of progress, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman Milonazo. Any further discussion on that matter? If not, we have a motion to accept the report as a report of progress from Council Milonazo, seconded by Council Samaras. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Being just after 7 o'clock, we'll switch back to the public hearing. If there's no objection, we'll waive the full hearing and do the second reading by title. An ordinance amending the Code of Ordinances in the City of Lowell, Massachusetts with respect to Chapter 222 entitled Peace and Good Order by adding Section 222-12.1 entitled Banning Replica Firearms. Chair would open up the public hearing on behalf of the proponents. Are there any proponents that wish to speak on the issue?
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the members of the City Council, I'm William Taylor. I'm the Superintendent of Police in the City of Lowell. I'd like to speak and to advocate for this city ordinance banning the possession and display of replica firearms in the City of Lowell. I think it's a necessary public safety measure in this city. The problem essentially comes down to the inability of my police officers to quickly distinguish between a replica firearm and a real firearm in the city during the course of their duties trying to protect the citizens of Lowell. There have been numerous cases in the past several years where replica firearms have been either used in the commission of a crime or have been in possession of individuals in the city when police officers encounter them in the course of their duties, usually involved in some kind of a disorder or trying to protect the public peace. Many of times my officers have had extreme difficulty, as I indicated, trying to distinguish a replica firearm from a real firearm. Usually it's a handgun. And so I think this particular ordinance banning them in the city is necessary. I think it will ensure the public safety not only of all the citizens, but also my police officers that are out there every day trying to protect the citizens of Lowell. There's one very noteworthy incident that occurred in Cleveland last year, where a young boy was unfortunately shot by a police officer. That young boy had a replica firearm that the police officer didn't have the ability to make that split-second distinction, and unfortunately resulted in the death of that individual. I would not want a similar tragedy to occur in the City of Lowell. I think this ordinance, in large measure, will try and prevent that.
Thank you, Chief. Anybody else who wishes to speak in favor? Anyone else wishing to speak in favor? In favor? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing on behalf of the proponents and open it up for those who wish to speak in opposition. Anybody who wishes to speak in opposition?
Good evening. My name is Jeff Pearson. I live at 3 Washington Parkway in Lowell. I'm actually really concerned about this proposed ordinance, in particular in the way it's written. First thing, what I'm wearing tonight is not a costume. This is actual clothing. It was hand-tailored for me, and the reason for that will become apparent in a moment. Now, first, as a parent, I do not approve of toy guns. I have actual firearms in my house. You can understand the contradiction that we would be facing if my children were playing with guns and then encountered a real one. But that's my decision. And if one of my neighbors decides to furnish their children with toy guns, that's their decision. It is not my business to tell them otherwise. Now, as to the presumed content of this ordinance, titled Banning Replica Firearms. Genuinely, do we honestly believe that criminals in this city are going to adhere to the content of this law? I think one of the points was you'd have to paint a replica firearm, orange. Do you genuinely believe that the criminals are going to do that? I genuinely don't think so. This also, the way this is worded, this would give the police complete discretion to confiscate any firearm that they felt fit into this category with no due process. There'd be no compensation for confiscated property and no recourse. Definitions in this proposed ordinance are vague, and that would really leave it open to wide interpretation. And to that point, I have spent about 25 years of my adult life reading and writing technical specifications and design documents used in software, civil engineering, and sometimes mechanical engineering. This is the most vaguely worded document I have read, and it took, from what I'm seeing here, 8 lawyers to come up with it. In particular, the term replica. There is an attempt to redefine or expand the definition of replica in this document. And then the document goes on to use that term no less than 9 times in these 2 pages. And this is what really worries me. In the state of Massachusetts, it is not only legal but protected right to own a number of replica firearms. These are real, functioning, but replica firearms. To that point, there are laws that protect even a convicted felon in this state to legally possess a muzzleloader, both replica or modern. There are reasons for that. I would encourage you to actually research that one on your own. So, obviously, one of the reasons I'm dressed like this is because I am a member of a reenactment group, a revolutionary reenactment group. I'm not officially speaking for them here tonight, so I will not be disclosing their name. Let us suppose I am in a parade in Lowell, or at another sanctioned event in Lowell. The way this is written, any police officer in the city could walk up to me and any other member of my group, or any member of any other group, and confiscate hundreds or thousands. Yes, some of these replicas cost thousands of dollars with no due process. Our founding fathers, 240 years ago, signed a piece of paper knowing full well that some of them would be traced down and possibly executed. Many more gave their lives on the battlefield to protect our rights, our civil rights, some of our pre-political civil rights. And this is how we honor their memory? By making a grab for personal property? Very recently, this city has come under very close national scrutiny. It has been accused of violating not only the Second Amendment, but the 14th. That's also called the poll tax. This legislation would be a pathway to violate our Fourth Amendment. And we just heard it again tonight. This is apparently another recommendation to ensure public safety. I've heard that phrase used a lot in these chambers over the last year, to ensure public safety. I would suggest we take a closer look at that from an historical context. Those words have been used, and never in a good way, historically. As to this piece of paper, in my mind, there's only one place for it to go, and I would not dishonor my replica musket by using it as wadding. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition?
Hello, everyone. Nice to be back here, I guess. My name's Dan Gannon, 110 Frida Lane. For a city council that has said many times over the last year that they don't know anything about firearms or firearm laws, we're here for a second time in, less than a month, discussing another firearm policy. This one just concerns me on a federal level. I mean, you've already shown not to look up state laws with your policy. After 40 days, a resident can call their reps, their senators, their governor, and the Firearm Record License Bureau to let them know that they don't have their license or denial yet at 41 days. Doesn't matter if the policy for the city is 3 months. 40 days is the law. So with this policy, we're already opening up the city to action from the state. And so now we've jumped over the state with that policy, and now we're jumping into federal quagmire. The state is currently working on a bill of the same thing. It's called 3476. It's in the Joint Committee of Public Safety. Funny enough, public safety is coming up a lot here. And they felt that they were infringing on federal regulations and laws on this subject. So they sent it off to their Judiciary Committee, and there it sits, just waiting, and nothing's happening. It is being reviewed to whether or not the state can come up with a legal way to do this and not infringe on federal laws. I highly doubt that. Was it 8 lawyers? 8 lawyers in a vague way? Yeah. I highly doubt that 8 lawyers in a vague way could come up with a law that the Judiciary Committee can't seem to agree on at this point in Boston. It seems like we're coming on that this is another case of we can just do what we want when it comes to this stuff, like we heard last time. I mean, the President of the United States of America cannot do what he wants regarding civil rights, but yet we have been told in this room we can do what we want. The residents of the city of Lowell do not care about replica guns. They care about being robbed by gunpoint in the street and having gold chains ripped from their neck. They worry about heroin dealers walking around the streets trading their drugs for guns. They worry about cop killers from foreign countries walking around our streets. They do not care about fake guns. And I think spending any time on this is a waste of taxpayer money and a shame to your seats as leaders of the city. I'd like to close with a quote from Paul Heroux. He is a Democrat from Attleboro. He sits on the Joint Committee of Public Safety and Homeland Defense that we spoke to. And after hearing about 5 or 6 Lowell residents talk about the policy, along with cities, people from other cities talking about their policies, he had a nice little statement. I think it fits well, and I'm just going to end with it. For better or worse, you get the government you deserve. The residents of Lowell need to see what they can do about getting a new city council. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to speak in opposition?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, City Council, folks at home, for allowing me to speak. Randy Breton, Trotting Park Road. I'm here tonight to speak about the proposed ban on replica firearms. I just really don't understand what the council is trying to address here. What is plain to me is the theme of violating people's rights, both civil rights protected by the Second Amendment and now individual property rights. Unless I'm mistaken, there hasn't been a single incident in the city where a child has ended up as a tragic footnote in a Lowell Sun editorialized news article because they had a toy that looked like a real gun. Likewise, has there been any criminal use of toy guns? I'm not aware of any. By the way, in case you're not aware, criminals will do whatever they like. Simply take a toy gun, paint it black, rip the orange tip off, or even worse, make a real gun look like a toy. Spend 30 seconds on a Google image search, and you'll see them. Shotguns fit into hollowed-out, oversized squirt guns. Real guns, real pistols painted bright orange or pink. As a matter of fact, with the influx coming from women entering shooting sports and those coming to the realization that their protection is their responsibility, the firearms industry is now bristling with firearms in every color imaginable, trying to cater to the female shooter. Pink, teal, purple, every color under the sun. Could one of these be mistaken for a toy? It's entirely possible. This proposed ordinance does absolutely nothing for public safety and is nothing more than window dressing to give the appearance of actually doing something useful. How about the council address some real issues? How about instead of banning something, you create an ordinance with community outreach and education in mind? I don't know, as crazy as it sounds, maybe teach children not to point anything at police officers. Let's teach our kids that all lives matter and that they are not alone in the world and that people do care about them and their lives have real value. That rolling some old guy for $10 isn't fun or funny and isn't the answer to getting paid. That they don't deserve what someone else has, but that they can make their own way and achieve their own goals and attain their own things with hard work and a support system. How about we teach our kids respect for the law and respect for life? And that if you're in a situation where an officer tells you to stop because he wants to talk to you, you do so politely. That would be a far better use of resources than this proposal. Look, this ordinance in and of itself is a replica of the imitation gun ban, as brought up previously. It's Bill H3476. The state tried to pass that a few weeks ago. You may or may not be aware, but in light of the adopted firearms policy here in the city of Lowell, which clearly violates state law, and that the majority of you have turned a blind eye to, I and several others from the city testified in front of the Public Safety and Homeland Security Committee up on Beacon Hill a few weeks back. Well, Bill H3476 was heard there and ultimately was sent back to judiciary for review. Why? Because there is a very good chance that that bill violates existing federal law. That means that this ordinance probably does as well. Given all the negative national publicity the city has received over the past few weeks as a direct result of this council, do you really want more? And yes, it's national. The use of the word replica, intentional or not, is too open-ended and honestly troubling. There are plenty of reasons to own and have replica firearms. I heard from a martial arts instructor just today. She wanted to be here, but she was unable to. She uses replica firearms in her training classes, as do many firearms trainers. What about the avid collector who's into 19th century firearms? Or does cowboy action competition? Yes, that's a thing. Old-timey guns out on the range, and they're all replicas, every one of them. What if on the way to a competition, our guy takes a right on red where he shouldn't and he gets pulled over? The officer spots his gun case and asks to search the vehicle. Being a good law-abiding citizen with nothing to hide, he says yes. Now his replica firearm is being confiscated for a moving violation. It's absurd. It could happen, and it's absurd. And so is this proposal. You know, it's funny to reiterate what Mr. Gannon said just a few minutes earlier. Representative Haru from Attleboro looked me square in the eye during my testimony and said we get the government that we deserve, and planted the seed in our heads that maybe some of us running for city council. Someone else at the end of that committee, at the end of the session, who's on that committee, also approached us and talked about a recall election, seeing if that was possible. I'm not saying any of these things can and would happen, but is that something that you guys are interested in? Because it piqued our interest. When many of the sitting council members turn a blind eye to violations of state and now propose an ordinance that could very well violate federal law, what other options do we have? All I know is I've made some good contacts in the national press in the past few weeks. I'd suggest you do the right thing here and stop pretending to address public safety issues with frivolous, do-nothing ordinances.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition?
Armin Hebert, 499 Wilder Street. I don't know, I've been coming to these meetings for the last year. I've heard these people speak. I don't own a gun, never owned a gun, never fired a gun. I think we're just getting a little out of hand with now replica guns. You got our ROTC, we got people that use them in shows and stuff like that. I think we're really getting out of hand. If a criminal is taking a gun, and whether a real gun or a replica gun, a police officer should use the proper procedure in handling the situation, whether it's a replica or not. How does he know if it's a replica or not? And if a criminal got a gun, no matter what, he's probably not licensed, gun's probably not registered, and if it's a replica gun, he went in there on his own free will with a gun to commit a crime. So if he ends up being shot or being killed, he went in there consciously doing this, whether he did it or not. I think this gun thing is getting way out of hand. The council, it's all over the papers. You know what? The city's doing a lot of good things right now. You know what? And this is dragging it down. We can't put this into, what are we going to outlaw next? I think you really should look at your ordinances that are here for the city that should be enforced. You know, we got people out there with no jobs and everything else, but we will not enforce an ordinance that was put in there. The people who own guns and would like licenses, if they fit the protocol to get the licenses, I don't see why not. New Hampshire, you go up to New Hampshire, 2 miles up the street, you fill out your form, you get your license after your protocol. I don't see why we've got so much protocol on these people who are willing to do what they have to do to get licensed. Like I said, I don't own a gun, never had a gun, never fired one. And I just think this is getting out of hand because I've been coming to these meetings. And for this council not to let these people have their constitutional rights, you're breaking the law. You're breaking the law. I don't get it because I brought a proposal to this council and I was told it was unconstitutional. Well, that is coming back before this council, so just hear that. Thank you for hearing me.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition?
Good evening. I'm Charles Supin of 75 Melville Ave. I think it's been brought up a few times already this evening, but I just want to hit on some of the high points of what are the civic things we're going to lose in this city if this ban goes through. We've heard from the Revolutionary War and Civil War reenactors. We haven't heard from the Lowell High Air Force Junior ROTC, who has won awards the past 2 years for their armed drill team. I think this would shut them down at school, no even. I think we also haven't talked about what this means for the arts scene in the city. The main public spaces for theaters are city-owned, and as such public spaces where prop firearms would be banned, replica firearms would be banned. I think if the fighter were to be made after this was passed, all of the police officers in that movie on screen would all be paying $50 to the city as their penalty because they'd all be wearing prop firearms in their holster. I also think that there's recreational activities that we're discounting here. There are people who play paintball. There are places in the city where the city has issued permits for people to play paintball. They seem to fall under this shotgun definition of a replica gun. There's also families that have antique and heirloom toys that they pass down from generation to generation that you want them to go and spray paint orange. I'm okay with that once you tell the guy who has his Model T Ford that you have to spray paint it orange because it doesn't meet modern safety requirements. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to speak in opposition? In opposition?
Cliff Krieger, 77 Mansur Street. I think all the views have been covered, but since I signed up, I felt like I ought to stand up. I'm concerned that this is feel-good legislation and is not going to be effective, and that leads to just more and more laws, which leads to people having less and less respect for the law. The idea of ignorance of the law being no excuse sort of slides to the side because there are so many laws that no one can fully understand them. I think this needs to be considered very carefully. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak in opposition? In opposition? Opposition? Hearing none, we'll close the hearing on for the opponents and then open it up for the city council. There's no motion on the floor. Does anybody have anything? Councilor Elliott?
You need a motion?
Well, we don't need a motion, but there has to.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to speak on it.
Okay.
I want to thank the chief of police for getting up. I want to thank the speakers as well. That's why we have this forum here to discuss this, and I support it. I support it, and I filed the motion to have the city manager and the chief of police look into this because we're not alone. We have a problem with guns. We don't have a problem with legal guns. We have a problem with illegal guns in the city. We've known it for years. And I think, one of the speakers actually described the essence of why we need a replica gun when we have police officers who are going into situations where a gun is either displayed or it's not displayed, and they can't tell the difference. And to me, I don't want our police officers to have to second guess whether this replica guns, and these guns, if you see them, they're not the toy guns that used to shoot caps that are silver with a white handle. They're replica handguns that are black that look just like real handguns. I don't think this is no nonsense. It's not another law we're just throwing on the books to obstruct the rights of gun owners. I think that's quite the contrary. I think this is something that this city, along with the city of Boston and cities across the country and states across the country, are adopting. They're a public safety issue, whether we want to hear it or we don't want to hear it. Our responsibility here is to protect every person in the city. There's 108,000 people that live in 13 square miles in the city. We have a gun problem. There's a problem with the illegal guns. And our police officers shouldn't have to worry whether someone in a playground or someone in a home invasion has a replica or has a real gun. I think it's no nonsense. These are not toy guns that get into the hands of wrong people are a problem. So that's why I filed it. It's not about Second Amendment. It's not about 14th Amendment. It's not about trying to affect the rights of those law-abiding citizens who get trained, who get permitted, and who go through the right procedures. Guns across the country, kids are grabbing them and they're using them not to just go play games. So I feel this is important for our police officers, and look, they end up in schools, they're at playgrounds, and luckily, one of the speakers mentioned, we haven't had an incident that we don't know. That's what we're trying to prevent. I think this is, I think it's important. I think it's another step to address public safety, because that's what it is. We're not just trying to, again, I don't want to be redundant, but, we're not alone. Police officers across the country are taking these toy guns, these replica guns that look very real, and it's creating a problem. We have enough violent issues that we're dealing with, and we are dealing with it. We're dealing with heroin. We're dealing with we're dealing with safety issues of robberies and home invasions and burglaries. Go to any neighborhood meeting. We're getting reports. Our neighborhood leaders are asking questions. Councilors go to all these meetings. So, the notion that we're not focusing on this stuff, well, we're focusing. We have 17 more police officers. We're putting on more police. Public safety has been priority one of this administration, and I support this. I feel strongly that it's important. The ROTC, this is in public places where they are banned. Correct, Madam Solicitor? That's the intent. When they're in a public space, not at an event that's sanctioned, not when we have ROTC cadets performing. This is you just can't pull a gun in the middle of a public space, and that's the purpose of it. So, through you, Mr. Mayor, just a clarification. Can you just clarify for the council and the people at home watching that the intent and the purpose of this ban that's being adopted across the nation?
Sure. Well, you're right there. There are many cities and states that are adopting measures that are very similar to this. Boston has an ordinance that is very similar to this. Ours is different in the sense that it defines public property, and it is limited to guns on public property. So concerns that have been voiced tonight about guns being used in classrooms and in other private areas would not fall under this ordinance. And then the regulation also tries to tie up a definition of these guns in a way that's broader than the Boston ordinance, but also has more definition to it. As far as these replica guns, there is an avenue via the ordinance to plug the end of the weapon with an orange plug, in which, again, a police officer, law enforcement personnel would be able to easily identify that it may be a real gun, but it's not intended to be used. It's going to be used in a replica setting.
Okay, well, thank you for the clarification, and I will conclude. I understand there's still some frustration with speakers that, we're on a rampage to obstruct rights of gun owners. I don't think that's the case at all whatsoever. I want the public to know this council is not turning a blind eye by any stretch. The state statute outlines the procedure for getting a policy, put a policy in place. This council can do nothing about it. So we are not neglecting, we are not turning a blind eye. That's the way the statute was written. We've gone to almost every extent that we could to include a public participation process. But this one has nothing to do with the other, and I truly think this is in the best interest of the public, and that's why I brought it forward, and that's why I'm going to support it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor, any further discussion? Councilor Brock.
Sure. I believe one of the speakers had indicated that there was no recourse provided in the ordinance, but the recourse is that for those that are under 18, if a gun is confiscated, the parents or the guardians would be informed, and then they would be able to pick up the replica gun. The same is true for an individual over the age of 18 in that it would be confiscated, but they would be able to, again, pick it up after a 24-hour period. No, there's not a permanent deprivation of the property. If an individual with, say, a antique gun, as has been described, chose to bring that gun into a public space and wield it, the there'd be a violation of the ordinance. And if that gun were taken away, there is a remedy as to how to timely retrieve that property of yours.
If it was a sanctioned event that was allowed, there would be a problem, but it was just brought to a public space. No other reason just to have it out, take it away.
Correct. Correct.
Thank you, Councilman Milanazo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the speakers that came this evening. When I first looked at this, I viewed it as a public safety issue as well. Again, trying to keep our police officers safe. My question to the solicitor has to do with the idea of a replica firearm not being a real firearm, as I look at this. But replica firearms are, in fact, can be real firearms. Correct?
Absolutely. In fact, many of the, for historical reenactments, there are many of those weaponry that are used, whether in this country or abroad, that are in fact real weapons that need to be, where the holder needs to be properly licensed. That's,
So
again,
is our definition
that's
then,
something
is our
different.
definition of the replica firearm in this ordinance correct? Based upon, again, it reads, can reasonably be perceived to be a real firearm, when in fact, it's a real firearm.
Right. If we're talking about a real firearm for which you would need to be licensed, then it would not fall under this
Would not
ordinance.
fall. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor Samaras.
Thank you. Through the mayor to the city solicitor. All right, at the high school, we have in our handbook, outlawing replicas. You know the reason why. I mean, could you explain the reason why we have that in high school? I mean, you've seen that, but legally why we do have that?
The replica guns at the high school being prohibited for safety reasons, gang reasons, and other mistaken identity purposes.
That's correct. Okay. So is this outline, this ordinance, fit into that same profile?
The purpose behind this, and I think why Councilor Elliott had brought it forward, is that, as he had indicated, this ordinance follows along with many other cities across the country, as well as states. I believe the New York Attorney General's office had promulgated something similar to this for the same reasons.
Okay.
Weapons are being, some of these weapons are being used, even here in the city, to in the pursuit of crimes. And then there's the whole incident that the chief spoke to.
That's correct. But the issues that were raised, that our ROTC units would be subject to police observations or a program in which they were replicating Civil War or our fight for independence would be subject to, even though it was a planned program, would be subject to this ordinance.
Right, there are different ways of looking at it. One is, again, there are ways of taking guns that may otherwise look real and making it clear through plugs and other means that they are in fact not. And once that happens, then they wouldn't fall under the ordinance. Public places do obviously include your public ways as far as a parade. However, those events are licensed.
I mean, being the father of a policeman, I mean, this is something I've heard over and over again about the problems that replica guns do create. I mean, they have an instant to, they don't have a long time, they have less than seconds in a sense to ascertain whether the gun is real or not. So I support this type of need. But is there any way that this ordinance should be changed after some of the issues tonight that were raised about ROTC? Those are the things I'm concerned about. The issue of safety and what these replicas can do is serious. It's far more serious than, in a sense, because of what it does to a policeman in the position that policemen are placed in.
Right. No, but one of the things that we can do is, if changes are needed as we enact this, we certainly would be working closely with the police department, and any changes that perhaps need to be made in terms of a practical application would come back before the council and be and be recommended by.
I mean, there's no
both
question the
department and
intent of
law
the
department.
motion was not to disrupt ROTC or any clubs to do this.
Again, it
This
wouldn't-
is an issue on safety and what has become unfortunately prevalent in our society. And I know it was an issue that I was very, very much concerned, because there were times I could not tell the difference between, till I, had a policeman in the building to say, exactly what this was. I mean,
Correct.
not only squirt guns, but you had, there was a while back, cigarette lighters that there was no way you could tell, because they were heavy metal guns, and you found out afterwards it was a cigarette lighter.
Right.
It was but frightened many people.
Right. Again, to answer your question, the ordinance does provide a way of identifying the holder of a gun, and if it's not readily apparent, to take steps to make it apparent that it is not intended as a real weapon, namely the orange plug.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion? Counselor Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know the intention of this ordinance was as a result of a city council motion by one of my colleagues. And I'll say public safety and be darn proud of it. I'm very proud of the fact that we want to make our streets safer. Everybody in this room wants to do that. But I did listen to the other side. I heard both sides, and they bring valid points up here. I was looking on the internet over the weekend, and I saw this, and I'm not a fan of guns, but this was a rifle type of a gun. It was pink. It was very pretty looking. It was Hello Kitty with an emblem on the back of it, not the front of it, but the back of it. It was an AR-15. It wasn't a toy. It was a very real gun. It was pink. It was a Hello Kitty, and it was a real gun. I mean, they did bring up some very vital points. I think the ordinance is a bit vague. I'm wondering if a militia we reenacted, we had a parade and we had the militia marching and they had their replica guns. Would we be confiscating those guns according to this ordinance or not? Solicitor O'Connor.
Sure, a couple of things. First of all, again, if you could have a real gun that may look like a replica gun, such as the Hello Kitty, but that's not what this ordinance is designed to address. That becomes another issue. If somebody does have a pink Hello Kitty gun, then they would need to be properly licensed to have that gun. And again, it would have nothing to do with this particular type of ordinance. And to the second part of your question, as to the historical reenactment folks, if it is a real gun, which many of them are, then that's again, it doesn't fall under this ordinance. It would fall under a permitting issue. If it's not, if it is actually a replica or an object that is not an actual firearm, then again, there are ways of making sure that they are easily identified for law enforcement authorities. And that's what the ordinance is designed to do.
Well, there's no doubt about the fact that I have compassion for people, but I think my mind goes the other way when we're talking about illegal guns. These are criminals. Toy guns, and they want to use it in the commission of a crime. I have no sympathy for these people. This is where my thoughts lie. You want to commit a crime, you want to use an illegal gun, you want to use a phony gun, then the consequences will be with you. You know, I mean, I sympathize with people, but when they want to do bad, I don't have any compassion for that. And I have a hard time, I understand to support it, but I don't know. We're not voting on this tonight, are we?
We may.
We're about to vote.
We're not going to retool this, what?
There's no motion on the floor. So we could have a motion to approve, we could have a motion to refer to the Public Safety Subcommittee for retooling We could do whatever the body wishes.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Counsel Elliott. Is there a second? Seconded by Counsel Belanger. On the motion, Counsel Leary.
Just a few questions, Mayor, through you to the city solicitor. So, for the gentleman that was speaking about Revolutionary War enactment or that type of interest, I'm going to travel to, I don't know, pick it to Billerica, and I'm leaving my house in Lowell, and I have a permit to use that weapon. I'm able to do that then.
Correct.
Okay, so I get pulled over by law enforcement, and I show my permit, then I'm fine carrying that replica gun to go to my approved event.
That's correct.
Okay. I mean, I think that's the big problem for me. When I first read this, that was, my first thing was thinking of, Civil War enactments, Revolutionary War enactments, other types of interests that are similar. That replica, that definition, these are replicas. But I think answering the question tonight that these are actual legal firearms where there is a method, an appropriate method of getting that license or permit to carry that or to use that in an appropriate fashion, it already exists. One thing, question of through you, Mayor, to the solicitor, and it's something I didn't know much about, but someone mentioned tonight about a similar law at the state level. Do we know anything about that? Is that something we've researched? I don't know if any additional feedback could be brought forth on that.
Mr. Manager.
Yes, there's a bill pending before the House right now to ban replica guns, and it's in the Judiciary Committee waiting further action.
Is that actual ban on including the Revolutionary enactment
I haven't
firearms?
read it in, but there's a bill pending before the legislature right now.
Okay. So supporting this tonight is not in an act of eliminating folks who have those interests, going to those enactments or those activities. Okay. Or like an interesting part that, the marketing of different types of weapons to different types of folks with different colors, that doesn't, if you have the correct permitting, then that's appropriate too. And we're not banning that with this ordinance. Is that correct? I think we said it already, but I think ultimately you can, if you follow the other ordinances we have, are allowed to do that if you meet the criteria.
Your question is if you wanted to have a pink actual gun, we're not
Correct.
prohibiting that.
Correct.
That's correct.
Okay. I think the keys are that the other ordinance we just passed earlier, are we following through with those commitments? That's important. I think we should get a report on that because that's really would address some of these issues we're talking about tonight. As long as we're doing that appropriately, I think supporting this ordinance will in fact, help law enforcement. But I do agree, when I first read this, it was very tricky. You're reading it and you're thinking, and I'm thinking of the gentleman who's also my neighbor here, that's going to prohibit him from using that. That's an interest that he has, that he takes seriously. And we're not doing that here tonight by voting for this ordinance. Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councilor Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can I just ask the chief a couple of questions? Chief? So this is a little bit off the subject, but how many permits are issued in the city for legal, people that have applied and issued for license to carry? How many do you issue, have you issued?
I believe the figure that I used was approximately in the range 5,000 to 6,000.
6,000, okay, all right, great. So last year, and I know you may not have the exact figure, but how many gun-related incidences, shootings, robberies, could you estimate took place in the city?
I don't have that data in front of me, but
could you get that for us at some point? Because
sure.
I think it's just going to demonstrate just the need for us to continue to do what we can to help our police officers keep our streets safe. I think that'd be helpful because regrettably, it's significant, and we need to continue to work to narrow that number. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Mr. Manager, did you have something you wanted to add? Council Lee.
Sure, thank you. I just want to add that I guess we're going to vote on this tonight, and I'm not sure about this. I think it's a little bit vague. I understand the intent of the maker of the motion, but listening to both sides and different situations that arise that exclude certain situations that arise that, whether it's a real gun or a play gun, the intent of the use of that gun, So I don't know, I'm not comfortable with this tonight, but, so I'm not gonna vote for it, but I just think that, I understand both sides, I understand what he's trying to, what the intent of the motion is for, but I think, in my opinion, I'm just not comfortable with the wording tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Manager, do you have something to add?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just feel compelled to make a comment about those disparaging remarks that Representative Paul Heroux made about this city council. I served in the legislature with Paul Heroux, and I've now served with this city council for almost 2 years. Trust me, by far, I respect this city council much more. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. Council Mercia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the solicitor, Madam Solicitor, can you point out in this ordinance where it says the statement where if you are properly licensed to carry this replica, where does it say this in here?
If you are properly licensed, then you don't fall under this ordinance at all.
But it doesn't
It's-
say
it's-
it. It doesn't specifically say it in here.
This is aimed at.
It's vague to me. It's very vague.
If I could respond. This is aimed at replica firearms. So if you have an actual firearm that you would need to be licensed to carry, then it does not fall under this ordinance. My point was that many of the reenactments will involve actual firearms. And in that case, then they do not fall under this ordinance. Those that have them would have to go through existing rules and regulations, state and local, in order to be properly licensed to carry those weapons. It has nothing to do with this particular ordinance. This particular ordinance was modeled after the Boston ordinance that had passed. It is exactly the same, except for two things. One, there is no definition in the Boston ordinance for what constitutes public property, and in this ordinance, there is a definition. Secondly, in the Boston ordinance specifically prohibits certain colored guns, namely a bright orange, a bright blue, a bright pink, and a few other colors. Our ordinance actually prohibits brightly colored weapons and gives examples of colors, but does not limit it in the way that Boston's does. So that, in other words, under Boston's ordinance, and this would be a perfect example, you could have a brightly colored green gun that did not fall under Boston's ordinance, did not cover it. In this ordinance, those types of situations are now covered. So they're actually quite specific as opposed to vague.
I just can't believe that I may read in the paper that someone robbed a bank with a toy gun painted orange. I just find that kind of bizarre, because the criminal is not going to take a make-believe gun and have it painted. They're going to get it somehow like they do the illegal guns, so I don't see how this is prohibiting anything. I really don't.
Yeah, Madam Solicitor.
Maybe the chief could speak to this. However, that really is the point, that if the only guns that are allowed that are toys are ones that are obviously so, then it stands to reason they're not going to go into a local convenience store brazing a neon orange gun that can be easily identified as a toy. That's what the ordinance tries to create. That's the situation it tries to create. What it prohibits are those guns that somebody could go into a convenience store with that would look like a real gun. And the consequences that could follow that are the ones that the city is looking to avoid, namely a store owner who might panic and pull out an actual weapon, a police officer who may then come into the store and again discharge his weapon. So these are steps that are being taken by communities, again, across the country, local, state, and it's designed to avoid the very situation that you raise. It's a good point, and that's exactly what this is trying to avoid.
Well, I think the next step should be to call Mattel and all the people that make these toys for kids and have them sell them that way. That's just an idea.
Thank you, Counselor. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Quick comment, one comment, just, it's important. I think the issue we got to follow up is the other issues we talked about, though, in terms of the ordinances we do have in place, that we have those mechanisms to make permitting appropriate. That's something we could probably talk about at length at a later time frame, but I know some of these issues about education, training, that's stuff that we still have to get a follow-up on, because I haven't heard anything about where we are with that from our last ordinance. I think that's important. Thank you.
Okay, roll call.
Counsel Milonazo.
Yes.
Counsel Rourke.
Yes.
Counsel Samaras.
Yes.
Counsel Belanger.
Yes.
Counsel Elliott.
Yes.
Mayor Kennedy.
Yes.
Counsel Leahy.
No.
Counsel Leary.
Yes.
Counsel Mercier.
No.
7 yeas, 2 nays.
Okay, the next order of business is item 7.2, which is the report from the Economic Development Subcommittee of a meeting that was held earlier this evening. Councilor Samaras.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Tonight's meeting, the subcommittee meeting, was a very positive meeting. We had with us John Power, the president of Farley and White, possibly Lowell's largest commercial taxpayer, making a presentation as to programs or companies that he now has in his locations. We first thanked him, the council first thanked him about the smokestacks at Warner-Lancet Mills that have been lit up for the Christmas holidays and his commitment to the quality of life in the city of Lowell. He talked about 20 years ago where he was the main leasing agent at Cross Point. And he talked about why he could do it. And he said, basically what he said, he found that Lowell was a different place. And what he meant by that, Lowell was a place that asked the right questions, that there was a quality of life in the city, there was something that would allow him to go out and to sell to various companies a reason why they should come to Lowell. Then he began to talk about the last 5 years and what has helped him sell the city of Lowell. He first talked about the Lowell Plan, which is a public-private partnership adventure that is being copied by many, many companies or cities in this Commonwealth and in other states. He talked about, since 18 years ago when he himself purchased the Warner-Lancet Mills, he's purchased property at the Boot Mills and Cross River Center. He has gone to over 1 million square feet of property in Lowell. The Cross River section, which was the old Macon out in Pawtuckaville, when he took it over, was 40% rented. It's now at an 80% rental. Talked about the different companies that came in and were very successful there. One of the companies he talked about was Autoliv, which had 70,000 square feet, is now going to have 130,000 square feet of space. And what they do, they design radar for the cars that actually help a car come to a complete stop if something were to be in the way. And the reason why he's here, he talked about the workforce that they can obtain and the research that's being done at the University of Lowell. So when people talk about, what is there about Lowell, why would they come? The university is a natural resource that they utilize. So here's a company that's expanded, bringing in maybe 70 or 80 more jobs, which can grow even greater. He rented over 40,000 square feet to a company called CSPI at the Warner-Lancet Mills. And this was a company from Billerica. But one of the main reasons why they came to Lowell was the Warner-Lancet Mills is so close to the University of Lowell, and part of their posture in their business to be more successful is to take away as many students as they can from the university. In other words, as they graduate, convince them to come to work for their company. He talked about the Warner-Lancet Mill, which he's always been successful, is 90% filled. And he talked about where people come to Lowell and they enjoy the city. Because sometimes as a group, we look at our city in a negative way, and sometimes people come before us and they talk about, the city is this, the city is that. This is a very good city with good people. And he talked about the political system with the manager who helps support many of the programs that are going on. His employees are happy, and the places that he has in Lowell, he's found it's good for the companies. It's a good distribution point, because if you think about it, you have Route 3, 495, 93, and a railroad station. So distribution is not a problem. But what he did talk about was when he first obtained the Wanalancet Mills, there were problems there. There was problems that concerned people about safety. And Chief Davis at the time put a detective unit in the Wanalancet Mills when he first opened up those buildings. There is no longer, and a cruiser in front of the site. There's no longer a cruiser there. There's no detective group in there. All of his people feel very safe, and they enjoy being part of Lowell. But what he talked about, there was a perception at the beginning, and through the efforts of Ed Davis, then Superintendent of Police, and the city manager at the time, and the city council, it created a positive environment. Talked about questions, what he talked about was that he felt that he can reach out to the manager in the Department of Planning and Development to do the work and solve problems. Mr. Cook talked about companies are not so much concerned about the corporate tax rate as they are about education, and we talked about that with the net school spending. Activities, things to do, that's what they're looking at. Housing stock, and a positive quality of life. So basically, he came before us, and what he stated is, if you want to look at it, it's a good city, and this is the type of information that the public really needs to hear. Why is a developer in Lowell? Why does he feel he can be successful? And it's because he has found a positive political climate, in the management system of the management of the city, activities to do in the city, a safe city, and a city that's got a natural resource in a university and a community college. So we were thrilled to have him before us and to listen to someone who's invested literally a lot of money in this city. And I'm sure he would not put that kind of money in there if he couldn't have a value, and he has found that value. And I think it's kudos to the people of Lowell, that everybody's trying to do the right thing, and using him as the model, I think, with what we're going to do with the Hamilton Mill projects in other areas, is certainly going to make Lowell be a very unique city in this Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Samaras. We have a motion by Councilor Samaras to accept the report as a report of progress, seconded by Councilor Rourke. Discussion on the motion. All in favor, all opposed, so voted. Next order of business are petitions. Under petitions in your packet, there were two items, but there's only one that appears on the agenda. So the chair would entertain a motion to suspend the rules by general consent. If there's no objection to suspending the rules, we'll suspend the rules to include the second item. And so the motion now would be to refer the petitions to the Law Department for a report and recommendation. We have a motion by Councilor Belanger to do that, second by Councilor Elliott. Discussion, all in favor, all opposed, so voted. Now we go to council motions, city council motions. The first motion of the evening is a motion that's filed by Councilor Samaras and Councilor Belanger to request that the city manager inquire of the proper state agency regarding the future use of the MAC building on Shattuck Street. Needing no second. Do the makers of the motion want to speak? Councilor Samaras.
Thank you, Mayor Kennedy. Basically, the motion speaks for itself, but the thing is, the MAC building at one time, as the city manager and former state representative knows, was a museum that was run by the state. And they did a lot of work in that area, creating a small park, and that was a wonderful point of interest for a lot of people, but for whatever reason, it has failed, and that building has remained empty. But it's on Shattuck Street. It's a corridor going from City Hall, basically, right into the National Park building. And if possible, could the city manager look into what the state has planned for it, if anything, and if not, come back with some possible ideas of what could be done? I know Mr. Corey, Council Belanger, myself, when we've walked the area, this is an area of concern, and I think the other Council Belanger would speak on it also.
Council Belanger?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, to add to Council Samaras' remarks, I mean, this is a very important building in the downtown, and what makes it so important, it abuts two more or less parks, if you will. One dedicated to a family member, the Badger Galupos, and another park indicating that's indicative of our mill history. And one of them is used more than the other, but they both can afford to be a lot more active what they are. They're two beautiful gems right in the middle of downtown. And when the building's underutilized, these parks are going to be underutilized. So we think it's an important piece to see what the status is and how we can ramp up activities. And again, both of those parcels that abut this building as well. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? All opposed? So voted. The next motion of the evening is a motion by Councilor Belanger requesting the city manager work with the LRTA to implement rental multimodal transportation from the Gallagher Terminal to points of interest in Lowell. Seconded by Councilor Milanazzo. Councilor Belanger.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This Lowell being on the end of a very major commuter rail, just recently coming home from Boston a few weeks ago, I needed transportation. I was dropped off, and there's no rental transportation there at the Gallagher Terminal, where, I believe there should be, like you see in major cities, whether it's zip car or bike rentals, for those who want to come enjoy the city and go to points of interest, and maybe come back, take the train home. I think makes them, if a tourist, if you will, is able to rent a car or a bike, now they're under their own control, and they can hit a lot of different destinations rather than a taxi or walking. And I think there's a whole citywide benefit to that in general. So I think we need to look into getting with the times and giving visitors and tourists the ability to have mobility, to see all points of interest, not just be restricted to one by foot or by car, to be able to go to a lot of different destinations at the same time frame and come back and jump on the train. So I think that'd be very advantageous to all sorts of businesses throughout the city if we can achieve this, and I have the utmost confidence in the manager and his administration and his appointee, Phil Shea, that represents us on the LRTA. So I think there's a big need for this. I really do, and I think it'd do very well. I think we'd all be very surprised at the outcome. So I look forward to the response. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilor. Any further discussion? Councilor Blanchard, you could have called me. I would have come and picked you up.
I'll keep that in mind, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Be prepared in all hours.
All in favor? All in favor of the motion? All opposed? So voted. Last motion of the evening is a co-motion by Councilor Leary and Councilor Leahy to request that the city manager contact Verizon and Verizon Wireless and request their 2016 plan for Lowell as it relates to broadband and wireless antennas. In addition, please request the aforementioned parties to provide the appropriate representation to be present at the next Technology and Utilities Subcommittee in order to discuss their plan. Needing no second, Councilor Leary.
Just quickly, we're going to try to do that subcommittee on March 1st, so that, if they can make that time. The key is not to just get their outside counsel to come in, just get an individual someone from their operations to talk about what their plans are. And if that relates to, just open a dialogue, what we can do to work together to achieve both our goals, which I think obviously is theirs to provide good service, and ours is to get opportunity to have variety. So anything we can do to begin that dialogue, and in addition, the other wire tower out on Bridge Street we'll talk about as well. So that's essentially the idea of the motion.
Okay, thank you. Council Leahy.
Thank you. I think Councilor Leary said it all, so we'll set up that subcommittee meeting and start the dialogue.
Okay. Any further discussion? Mr. Manager?
Yeah, the best person to come in for that is Stephanie Lee. That's their governmental relations person. So I just want to make sure that, did you say March 1st?
If we can, we
Yeah, I
can do
just
a
want to
different
make sure
day.
she's available because I think
But
she's the best
Key
one.
is really our operations, though. It's nice to get the government folks. It's also two different companies.
Yeah.
If you notice, because there's two different
Right.
issues with these guys. So we can get the people that can at least talk to the people directly that can make something happen or begin a dialogue. I don't anticipate something in one meeting, but we've been doing this kind of for a while, so let's see if we can get some specific results from it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Council Rourke.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councilor Lear is correct. We've heard enough from the mobile people as far as, if we can get someone from the fire side of things to explain why not, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion? All opposed? So voted. Last item on the agenda is announcements. Are there any announcements? Councilman Milonazo.
Yes, I have two, actually, although I don't want to take anyone's thunder. But tomorrow evening, the Working City Challenge Grant over at the Senior Center begins at 5:30, and it's actually to talk about a vision for the acre. So that's tomorrow evening at the Senior Center, 5:30 to 8 p.m. And then on Thursday night, February 11th, over at UMass Lowell Innovation Hub on the third floor at 110 Canal Street, it's Canal Vitality. And it's a follow-up meeting to the meeting that we all attended at Mill 5 to get the working groups together, and that's Thursday at 5:30 to 7 over at the Innovation Hub on 110 Canal Street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Chair will entertain a motion to adjourn. We have a motion to adjourn by Councilor Rourke, seconded by Councilor Mercia. All in favor, all opposed? Adjourn.
All right, good job, Eddie.
Listen, bring LaRue in. Who's that? Bring LaRue in. How's he? Ho, Rose.